Admiral stood on the bridge of the flagship, Eternal Wisdom, watching death approach his people one ship at a time. Through the massive viewing window, he could see the other vessels of the Exodus fleet stretching into the darkness. 300 ships carrying the last survivors of his race, all trapped like insects in the web of a dying neutron star. The star itself looked like an angry red eye in space. It spun faster than any normal star should, pulling everything toward it with invisible hands that no ship could break free from. For 18 months, the fleet had been caught here, slowly dying as their engines failed one by one. Another ship went dark as watched. The golden mathematics had been home to 50,000. Now it was just a cold metal tomb floating in space. That made 37 ships lost. 63 more were showing critical engine failures. The rest would follow soon. "Admiral," his second officer said in their musical language, "the quantum drive cores on Deck 7 have stopped working. Our scientists say we have maybe 3 days of power left." Nodded slowly. His long, thin fingers touched the control panel with practiced grace. Like all, his skin had a soft blue glow that came from special cells under the surface. The glow was very dim now. When we're stressed or dying, their light faded. "Have our mathematicians finished their calculations?" asked. "Yes, Admiral. They have checked the numbers 47 times. There is no escape. The gravitational pull is too strong. Even if we had working engines, we would need 100 times more power to break free." Was not surprised. They were masters of mathematics and science. They had built an empire across 12 star systems using logic and careful planning. If their greatest mind said escape was impossible, then it was impossible. "What about the distress signals?" he asked. "We have sent messages to every known species in the galaxy. The Empire said they are sorry but cannot help. The Crystalline Collective ran computer models and found no solution. The Void Merchants offered to buy our ships after we die." Paused. "The numbers are clear, Admiral. No species has technology that can save us." Around the bridge, other officers worked quietly at their stations. They had long, graceful necks and large eyes that saw more colors than most creatures. Their hands had 6 fingers, perfect for the complex controls of their advanced ships, but all their technology was useless now. Had lived for 400 years. He had seen the birth of stars and the death of worlds. He had commanded fleets in wars that lasted centuries, but this was different. This was the end of everything his people had ever built. They had left their home world when their sun began to die. They had planned for hundreds of years, building the greatest ships ever created. Each vessel was like a small world, with forests and lakes and cities inside. They carried the knowledge and culture of a billion-year-old civilization. But they had made one mistake. They had chosen a route through this system because their computers said it was safe. The neutron star had been normal then, but something had happened. Maybe it hit another star or a black hole passed nearby. Now it was unstable, pulling everything toward it with impossible force. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we are getting reports from the outer ships. The gravity is getting stronger. 6 more vessels have lost engine power in the last hour." Closed his large eyes. Each ship held families, children, artists, scientists, people who had trusted him to lead them to safety. People who would die because he had made the wrong choice. "Admiral," said softly, "the Council of Elders is asking when we should begin the final ritual." The final ritual was an old tradition. When death was certain, they would gather to share memories and sing the songs of their ancestors. It was a way to die with dignity, accepting the mathematical truth that all things must end. "Tell them we will begin in 3 hours," said. "All ships should prepare." He walked to his private chamber behind the bridge. The room was simple, with white walls covered in mathematical equations. A small plant from his home world grew in a corner, its purple leaves glowing softly in the dim light. Soon it would die too. Sat at his desk, and began to write the final message that would be sent into space. Future explorers might find it someday and learn what happened to the last. To whoever finds this recording, he spoke into the computer. We are the people. We came from the star system Prime, which died 3 years ago. We tried to find a new home, but fate had other plans. We are trapped by gravity we cannot escape. Our science, our wisdom, our mathematics, none of it matters now. We will die here, but we want the universe to know we existed. We built beautiful cities, wrote great poetry, and loved our children. Remember us. The computer recorded his words and prepared to broadcast them on all frequencies. Maybe some young species would hear it millions of years from now. Maybe they would learn from the mistake. A soft chime told him that ships across the fleet were gathering their people for the final ritual. Soon, they would sing together one last time, their voices carrying across the emptiness between the ships. Was about to turn off the recording when something made him pause. Deep inside his logical mind, a strange thought appeared. What if help came? What if some species received their distress call and decided to try something impossible? He shook his head. That was not logical thinking. That was hope, and hope was dangerous when the numbers were clear. They had learned long ago that emotion could make bad decisions. Mathematics never lied. Still, he left the distress signal running. Even if it was pointless, even if no one could help, he would keep calling out to the stars until the very end. It was all he could do. Outside his window, another ship went dark, then another. The end was coming faster now. But the signal kept broadcasting, sending their story into the dark space between the stars, hopping against all logic that someone, somewhere, might hear and care enough to try the impossible. Captain Sarah was drinking her morning coffee when the universe changed forever. She sat in the command chair of the human exploration ship Defiant Curiosity, watching the stars through the main screen. They were 3 days into a routine survey mission in the Outer Rim, looking for new planets that humans might colonize someday. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, "I'm picking up a strange signal. It's not like anything I've heard before." Sarah was a small woman with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She had kind eyes but a stubborn chin that her crew knew meant trouble for anyone who got in her way. At 35, she was young for a starship captain, but she had earned her rank by making good decisions under pressure. "Put it on speaker," she said. The bridge filled with an alien sound that was somehow both beautiful and heartbreaking. It sounded like singing, but the words were in mathematical patterns instead of a normal language. Even without understanding the meaning, everyone could hear the sadness in it. "Computer, can you translate this?" Sarah asked. The ship's AI worked for several minutes before responding. "Translation complete, Captain. This appears to be a distress call from a species called the. They are requesting immediate assistance. However, the situation described appears to be impossible to resolve." "What do you mean impossible?" Sarah stood up from her chair. "The message indicates that 300 ships carrying the last members of their species are trapped in the gravity well of an unstable neutron star. They calculate that escape would require technology that does not exist. They are preparing for what they call the final ritual, essentially waiting to die with dignity." The bridge fell silent. Sarah's crew of 25 were all experienced space explorers, but none of them had ever heard anything so sad. These aliens were singing their death song, and somehow it was the most beautiful thing they had ever heard. "Where are they?" Sarah asked. "The signal is coming from the 442 system, approximately 6 light-years from our current position. Captain, I should note that approaching a neutron star would be extremely dangerous for this vessel." Dr. Martinez, the ship's science officer, pulled up data on his screen. "Captain, neutron stars have gravitational fields millions of times stronger than Earth. If what these aliens say is true, any ship that gets too close will be crushed or torn apart." "How long would it take us to get there?" Sarah asked, ignoring the warning. At maximum warp about 8 hours, replied the navigation officer. Sarah's first officer, Commander Williams, stood up. He was a tall, serious man who had served with Sarah for 3 years. Captain, we need to discuss this privately. They went to Sarah's ready room, a small office next to the bridge. Williams closed the door and turned to face her. Sarah, you can't be thinking what I think you're thinking. Those people are going to die, Tom. They're asking for help. They're aliens. We don't know anything about them. And even if we wanted to help, how could we? Our ship isn't designed to handle that kind of gravitational stress. Sarah walked to the window that looked out at the stars. When I was 7 years old, I fell through the ice on a frozen pond. The water was so cold I couldn't move. I was going to drown, and I knew it. Then this kid I didn't even like jumped in and pulled me out. His name was Danny, and he was the class bully. What's your point? He could have let me die. It would have been safer for him. But he didn't think about safety. He just saw someone who needed help. Sarah turned back to Williams. That's what makes us human, Tom. We help people even when it doesn't make sense. This is different, Sarah. This isn't some kid falling through ice. This is a neutron star that will kill all of us. Maybe, but we have to try. Williams shook his head. The crew has families back on Earth. You can't risk their lives for aliens who are probably going to die anyway. I won't order anyone to come with me, but I'm going to ask them to vote. They returned to the bridge. Sarah looked at her crew, people she had worked with for years, people she trusted with her life every day. I'm going to be honest with you, she said. I want to help those aliens. I know it's dangerous. I know we might not come back, but they're singing their death song out there and I can't just ignore that. She paused, looking at each face. This isn't an order, it's a request. Anyone who wants to leave can take a shuttle to the nearest. I'll understand completely. The crew looked at each other. Finally, Engineer spoke up. Captain, my grandmother used to say that if you can help someone and you don't, then you're not really living. You're just taking up space. I'm in, said Torres from communications. Me too, added Dr. Martinez. One by one, every crew member volunteered, even Commander Williams, despite his worries. All right then, Sarah said, trying to keep the emotion out of her voice. Set course for the 442 system, maximum warp. As the Defiant Curiosity jumped to faster-than-light speed, Sarah sent a message back to the This is Captain Sarah of the Earthship Defiant Curiosity. We received your distress call. We're coming to help. Don't give up yet. 6 light-years away, Admiral stared at his communications officer in confusion. Are you certain this translation is correct? He asked. Yes, Admiral. They say they are coming to help us, but this makes no mathematical sense. Our long-range sensors show their ship is much smaller than ours. They have no advanced technology that we can detect. Why would they risk themselves for strangers? Thought about this. In all his centuries of life, he had never encountered a species that acted without logical reason. The humans were either very stupid or very different from any race he had ever known. Send a response, he said. Tell them we appreciate their offer, but they should save themselves. Show them our calculations. Make them understand that this is impossible. The human response came back quickly. It was just 3 words. We're coming anyway. For the first time in 18 months, Admiral felt something he had almost forgotten. It was small and fragile and completely illogical, but it was there. Hope. The Defiant Curiosity dropped out of warp space at the edge of the 442 system, and everyone on the bridge fell silent. The neutron star hung in space like an angry red eye, spinning so fast it made Captain Sarah dizzy to watch. Around it, the fleet looked like toys caught in a bathtub drain. My God, whispered Dr. Martinez, those ships are enormous. He was right. Each vessel was at least 10 times the size of their ship. They looked like floating cities made of silver and crystal, beautiful even in their death spiral toward the star. "Captain, I'm reading massive gravitational stress on all the alien ships," reported Tors. "43 vessels have already lost power completely. The others won't last much longer." Sarah studied the tactical display. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, showing radiation levels that should cook them all instantly. The gravity readings were so high that the computer had to use scientific notation just to display the numbers. "Range to the fleet?" she asked. 8 million kilometers and closing. "Captain, we're already feeling the gravitational pull. If we get much closer, we won't be able to escape either." Admiral's voice came through the communicator, translated by their computer. "Human vessel, you must turn back immediately. Our scientists calculate that your ship will be destroyed if you approach closer than 5 million kilometers." Sarah activated the communication system. "Admiral, we're here to help. What can you tell us about your situation?" "Captain, we appreciate your courage, but this is hopeless. We have run every possible calculation. There is no escape from this gravity well. Please save yourselves while you still can." "Let me worry about that, Admiral. Tell me about your ships." For the next hour, explained everything. The ships use something called quantum drives that could bend space to move faster than light. But the neutron star's weird gravity was interfering with the quantum fields. The drives couldn't get enough power to break free. "How much power would you need?" Sarah asked. "Approximately 100 times what our drives can produce, even at full capacity." Sarah looked at her crew. "What do you think?" Chief engineer was a stocky man with oil-stained hands and a mind that never stopped working. He had been studying the sensor readings while Sarah talked to the aliens. "Captain, I have an idea. It's completely crazy, but it might work." "I like crazy. What are you thinking?" Pulled up a diagram on the main screen. "See, the neutron star isn't just pulling things toward it. It's also creating ripples in space-time as it spins. We call them gravity waves." Dr. Martinez frowned. "I see where you're going with this, but the physics are insane." "Maybe," continued. "But what if we could make bigger waves? Our antimatter reserves could create controlled explosions at specific points around the star. If we time it right, we might be able to surf those gravity waves like ocean waves, using them to push the alien ships away from the star instead of toward it." The bridge fell silent. Commander Williams was the first to speak. "That's not crazy. That's suicidal. You're talking about flying our ship directly at a neutron star and setting off antimatter bombs. One mistake and we'll be vaporized instantly." "Tom's right," Sarah said, "but is it possible?" Dr. Martinez ran quick calculations on his computer. "Theoretically, yes. If we could create explosions at exactly the right time and place, the gravity waves might push the alien ships to escape velocity, but the margin for error is essentially zero." Sarah turned to the communication station. "Admiral, we have a plan. It's dangerous, but it might work." When she explained this idea, the silence from the fleet lasted so long that Sarah thought the communication had been cut off. Finally, responded. "Captain, our computers have analyzed your proposal. The probability of success is 0.0001%. The probability that you will be killed in the attempt is 99.7%. This plan violates every principle of logical decision-making." "Admiral, sometimes logic isn't enough." "I do not understand. Why would you risk certain death for such a small chance of success? We are strangers to you. Our species has never met before. What do you gain from this sacrifice?" Sarah thought about how to explain it. How could she make a logical species understand something that wasn't logical at all? "Admiral, there's an old human saying, someone has to try. Maybe we'll fail. Maybe we'll all die. But if we don't try, then those people definitely die, and we have to live with knowing we could have tried to save them." Another long silence. When spoke again, his voice sounded different somehow. "Captain, in 4 centuries of life, I have never encountered thinking like yours. Our science tells us that hope without mathematical support is a dangerous emotion that leads to poor decisions. But we are already dead according to our calculations. Perhaps dangerous emotions are acceptable when logic offers no solutions. Is that a yes, Admiral? It is a yes, Captain. But please understand, if your plan fails, your sacrifice will be remembered in our songs for as long as the universe exists. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. They all looked terrified, but none of them suggested backing down. All right, people, you heard the man. How long do you need to prepare the antimatter charges? Give me 2 hours to modify our torpedo tubes. We'll need to manually set the detonation timers since the neutron star's radiation will interfere with our remote controls. Dr. Martinez, I need you to calculate the exact spots where we need to set off the explosions. Tors, keep the communication lines open with the alien fleet. They'll need to fire their engines at exactly the right moment. Commander Williams stepped closer to Sarah. Captain, once we start this, there's no going back. The gravity will pull us in whether our plan works or not. I know, Tom, but is right about one thing: this is our only chance. If we're going to do this, we have to commit completely. As the crew prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history, Sarah stared at the spinning neutron star. It looked angry, like it was daring them to come closer. In a few hours, she would find out if human stubbornness was stronger than the fundamental forces of the universe. Admiral watched the small human ship begin its approach and felt something he had never experienced before. For the first time in his logical life, he was proud to know creatures who could look at impossible odds and decide to fight anyway. Maybe the humans were crazy, but maybe crazy was exactly what this situation needed. Captain Sarah gripped her command chair as the defiant Curiosity dove toward the neutron star. The ship shook violently as gravity waves crashed over them like invisible ocean swells. Around them, space itself was twisted into impossible shapes. Distance to target zone, 2 million kilometers, reported Tors, her voice tight with stress. Gravity is increasing faster than predicted. On the main screen, the neutron star filled their view. It spun 30 times per second, each rotation sending out pulses of deadly radiation. Solar flares erupted from its surface like angry fingers trying to grab their ship. Hull stress at 60%, called out from the engineering station. The gravitational shear is starting to tear us apart. Sarah could feel it too. The front of the ship was being pulled harder than the back, stretching the metal like taffy. Warning alarms screamed from every console. First explosion point in 30 seconds, Dr. Martinez announced. Antimatter torpedo loaded and ready. Sarah opened a communication channel to the fleet. Admiral, are your ships ready? All vessels that still have power are prepared, Captain. But you must know, we are detecting massive structural damage to your ship. You should retreat while you still can. Not a chance, Admiral. We're seeing this through. Commander Williams leaned close to Sarah's ear. Captain, the computer is showing a 95% chance of hull breach if we continue. Maybe we should listen to the alien. Sarah shook her head. Tom, if we turn back now, everyone dies. At least this way some of them might live. 10 seconds to first detonation point, Martinez called out. The ship screamed through space, riding the edge of the neutron star's gravity well. Through the window, Sarah could see the ships in the distance, dark and powerless, waiting for a miracle. Fire Torpedo 1 slammed his fist on the manual release. An antimatter torpedo shot out ahead of them and detonated in a flash of pure energy. For a moment, it was like watching a new star being born. The gravity wave hit them like a giant invisible hand. The defiant Curiosity was thrown sideways, spinning wildly. Emergency lights flickered as systems failed throughout the ship. Status report, Sarah shouted over the noise. Torpedo worked, Martinez yelled back, studying his instruments. The explosion created a gravity wave exactly where we needed it. The outer ring of alien ships is starting to move away from the star. Through the chaos, Sarah could see it happening. 12 ships that had been drifting powerless suddenly lurched away from the neutron star, pushed by the artificial gravity wave. Second detonation point coming up, prepared another torpedo. But Captain, we've lost main power to Deck 7. Life support is failing in sections 3 and 4. Keep going, we can fix the ship later. The second torpedo detonated closer to the star. The gravity wave was stronger this time, and it caught more of the alien fleet. Sarah watched as 30 more ships began to escape. But the defiant Curiosity was paying a terrible price. Each explosion pushed them deeper into the neutron star's grip. The hull groaned like a living thing in pain. Captain, Torres called out in panic. I'm reading massive radiation exposure on all decks. We're getting doses that should be lethal. Medical override, Sarah commanded. Inject everyone with radiation meds. We're not stopping now. Dr. Martinez was already preparing the third torpedo when the ship's computer spoke in its calm electronic voice. Warning. Hull breach detected in sections 1 through 5. Recommend immediate evacuation. Sarah looked around the bridge. Half the control panels were sparking. Blood ran from his nose where the radiation was starting to affect him. Torres was pale and shaking, but none of them suggested giving up. Third torpedo away, shouted. This explosion was the biggest yet, close enough to the neutron star that Sarah could see the star's surface ripple like water. The gravity wave caught the largest group of ships and hurled them toward safety. We've got 70% of the fleet free, Martinez reported. But Captain, we have a problem. There are still 90 ships trapped in the inner ring. They're too close to the star. We'd have to detonate our remaining antimatter almost on the star's surface. Sarah knew what that meant. Any ship that got that close to a neutron star wouldn't survive. But 90 ships meant hundreds of thousands of alien lives. How much antimatter do we have left? Enough for one more big explosion, but Captain, his voice trailed off. Say it. If we set it off that close to the star, the gravity wave will throw us directly into the neutron star's corona, the outer atmosphere. No ship can survive that. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about her crew, about their families back on Earth. She thought about the aliens who had been singing their death song when this all started. Admiral, are you reading this? Yes, Captain, we understand your situation. You have saved most of our people. That is more than anyone could have asked. Please save yourselves now. Admiral, how many people are on those remaining ships? A pause. Approximately 400,000, Captain. 400,000 lives. Sarah looked at her crew one more time. Commander Williams nodded slowly. Dr. Martinez gave her a small smile. Torres wiped away a tear and returned to her station. Just said, "Let's finish this, Captain." You heard them, Admiral. We're going to get your people out. Captain, I must ask you something. Why are you doing this? Your species and ours have never met. We have nothing to offer you. Why do you risk everything for strangers? Sarah thought about it as the ship dove toward the neutron star's deadly embrace. Admiral, there's something about humans you need to understand. We're not always logical. We don't always make smart decisions. But when we see someone who needs help, we help, even if it kills us. That's just who we are. Final detonation point in 10 seconds, announced. The neutron star filled their entire view now. It was beautiful and terrible, like staring into the eye of an angry god. Solar flares reached out toward them, and Sarah could feel the heat through the ship's hull. Fire the torpedo. Release the last of their antimatter. The torpedo flew directly into the neutron star's outer atmosphere and exploded with the force of a small sun. The gravity wave that followed was like the fist of God. It picked up the remaining ships and hurled them away from the star at impossible speed. But it also grabbed the defiant Curiosity and threw them directly toward the star's surface. "All power to engines," Sarah commanded. "Emergency burn." Pushed every system beyond its limits. The ship's engines roared as they fought against gravity that could crush planets. For a moment, it seemed like they might escape. Then the hull cracked. Atmosphere began venting into space. The engines sputtered and died. "Abandon ship," Sarah shouted. "Everyone to the escape pods." As her crew ran for the pods, Sarah stayed at her station, manually firing the ship's thrusters to give the escape pods time to get away. Through the window, she could see the neutron star getting closer. But she could also see something beautiful. In the distance, all 300 ships were flying free, their lights twinkling like stars against the dark. They had done it. Every single alien was going to live. As the neutron star reached out to claim the defiant Curiosity, Sarah smiled. Sometimes the impossible just needed someone crazy enough to try. 3 months later, Admiral stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Wisdom and looked down at the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. Below them stretched new, a garden world with blue oceans and green continents, their new home. According to every calculation his people had made, they should never have lived to see this world. They should have died 18 months ago, trapped forever in the gravity of that angry neutron star. But they were here because a small ship full of crazy humans had refused to accept that some things were impossible. "The final ships are landing now," Admiral reported. "All 300 vessels are safely in orbit. The colony ships have already begun building the first cities." Nodded, but his attention was focused on something else. In the center of the observation deck stood a monument made of crystallized music, the physical form of the song the humans had interrupted when they answered the distress call. But this wasn't the death song anymore. It had been transformed into something else, a song of hope. Carved into the base of the monument were words in both and human languages. "In memory of Captain Sarah and the crew of the Defiant Curiosity, who taught us that mathematics alone cannot measure the worth of a life." "Sir," said quietly, "the human government has sent another message. They want to establish formal diplomatic relations. They're asking about trade agreements and cultural exchanges." Almost smiled. The humans still didn't understand what they had done. They had saved an entire species, and now they wanted to talk about trade. It was so wonderfully irrational. "Send a reply," he said. "Tell them that everything we have belongs to them. Our technology, our knowledge, our planets, all of it. They saved our people. We owe them everything." "Admiral, the Council of Elders has finished reviewing the human rescue. They want to meet with you about something called the Academy of Human Irrationality." That made turn away from the window. For 3 months, his people had been struggling to understand what had happened to them. The rescue had broken something fundamental in their worldview. How could they build a civilization on pure logic when logic said they should be dead? The academy had been his idea, a place where young could study the strange species that had saved them, a place where they could learn that sometimes the impossible just needed someone willing to try. What did the council decide? "They approved the academy, sir. They want to start with 100 students. They'll study human history, human psychology, and something the humans call creative problem solving." Nodded. It was a start. Maybe his people could learn to be more than just living computers. Maybe they could learn to hope. A chime from the communication system interrupted his thoughts. "Admiral, we have an incoming message from the human ship Resilient Explorer. They say they have something important to show us." Frowned. The humans had sent several ships to check on the colony, but this was the first time they had requested a formal meeting. "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human vessel. A tall woman in a blue uniform stood at the center of the screen. She had gray hair and kind eyes. "Admiral, this is Captain of the Resilient Explorer. We have something that belongs to you." The camera moved and his heart stopped. There, standing on the human bridge, was Captain Sarah. She looked tired and had new scars on her face, but she was alive. Behind her stood the rest of her crew, Williams, Martinez, Torres, all of them alive. "Captain," said, his voice shaking with emotion, "we thought. Our sensors detected your ship being destroyed by the neutron star." Sarah smiled. "The ship didn't make it, Admiral, but we got out in escape pods just before the star claimed her. Your rescue ships found us 3 weeks later, floating in space. Apparently, one of your captains decided to do something illogical. He went looking for survivors even though his computers said there was no hope." Felt something wet on his cheek. It took him a moment to realize he was crying, something no had done in 1,000 years. "Captain," he said, "you must allow us to give you proper honors. You saved our entire species. Name anything you want and it is yours." Sarah shook her head. "Admiral, we don't want anything from you. We did what anyone would do." "But that is not true, Captain. We sent distress calls to 17 different species. 16 of them said it was impossible to help us. Only humans said they were coming anyway. Maybe the others were just being logical." "Perhaps, but Captain, I must tell you something. Your rescue has changed my people. We are building the Academy of Human Irrationality to study your species. We want to learn how to hope when logic says there is no hope. We want to learn how to try when mathematics says we cannot succeed." Sarah looked surprised. "Admiral, you don't need to study us to learn that. You just need to remember something very simple." "What is that?" "Everyone deserves someone who will try to save them, even when it's impossible, even when it doesn't make sense. Someone has to care enough to try." Admiral thought about those words as the communication ended. Around him, his people were building a new civilization on a world they should never have reached. Children who should have died were playing in gardens that logic said couldn't exist. The humans had given them more than their lives. They had given them something that their advanced mathematics could never calculate, the knowledge that caring about others was more important than being logical. 6 months later, the first class graduated from the Academy of Human Irrationality. They were young who had learned to ask, "What if?" instead of "What are the odds?" They had studied human history and discovered that humans succeeded not because they were logical, but because they refused to give up. The graduation ceremony was held in the new capital city, under a sky filled with 2 moons. Admiral gave the closing speech. "My young friends," he told the graduates, "today you have learned the most important lesson in the universe. There are 2 kinds of impossible: the impossible that cannot be changed, and the impossible that simply hasn't been tried yet. The humans taught us to tell the difference." He looked up at the stars, where somewhere in the darkness, human ships continued their explorations. "They saved us not because they were stronger or smarter than other species. They saved us because they believed that everyone deserves someone who will try. That is the gift they gave us. That is the gift we must give to others." In the audience, young who had been taught all their lives that logic was everything nodded in understanding. They had learned a new kind of mathematics, the mathematics of hope. And in the human sector of the galaxy, Captain Sarah continued her explorations, never knowing that she had started a revolution. A revolution that taught an ancient species that sometimes the most logical thing you can do is something completely illogical. Sometimes you just have to try. The universe was a little brighter for it.